Toyin Agbetu. I am a scholar activist. I'm a lecturer in social and political anthropology, a Pan-Africanist, a community educator, professional big mouth, father, husband, brother, son, all those kind of things. That's a really good one. Well, I was born in London, Hackney. My parents are from a place known as Nigeria. I'm a Yoruba man, so I'm an African. But where am I from? I'm from all these spaces, all these places. But my primary identity, I suppose, if you talk about my ethnic identity, is I'm an African. I'm a Yoruba man. The question about nationality is one that has plagued me throughout my life, essentially. Yes, I mean, there's an idea that you can't be British and African at the same time. You can't be British and Asian at the same time. You know, that somehow Britishness is explicitly tied to being European, and clearly that's a bit nonsensical. So yeah, that's happened, but you know, those are idiots. You know, I don't really worry about that kind of thing. If people are polite and they're asking as a courtesy, then I'll discuss it with them. If they're doing it from a racist place, then I don't normally engage. Well, the moment you become a parent and you have children, you have probably the most important responsibility that a human being can ever have, and that is actually guiding, protecting, and nurturing your children to independence so they can survive without you. But of course, you bring them into an environment, and in that environment, you want them to thrive. In the UK, unfortunately, it can be a toxic environment. And so things like beauty standards have a serious impact on how children see themselves. My film is based on children with African heritage, but this applies to children of all different backgrounds. But I'm focused on children with African heritage. So if you are someone who's racialized as black, for example, you are seen to be of limited intelligence or to not be attractive, you know, kind of like always the last you know, when someone's choosing who's going to be the most beautiful person in this image or something. Those things have changed over some time. There's still this thing about African women, for example, being exotica. So, you know, if African people are seen as beautiful, then it's normally kind of like linked to this exotic idea. But yeah, as a father, I have to make sure that my sons, my daughter, aren't affected by those, and they know how to counteract it. So that's really where that comes from. The boys' sketch is really a sample of discussions that actually take place even to this very day. Every time when we talk about beauty, there's this idea that it's only about women, it's only about girls, it's only about the female form. But of course, this is nonsense. Men often create these beauty standards. Men are impacted by these beauty standards just as much as women are. And so the film was really trying to show that actually men can actually inculcate, they can take in those toxic ideas and values and then project them onto what they think a woman is or a woman should be, what a beautiful woman should be. And that can have disastrous impacts. But of course, at the same time, there are other men who reject those ideas of beauty standards. And so it makes it, you know, I think, you know, if you're trying to be an educator, then you have to try and provide a level of balance. It's very easy to say the standards are just wicked and evil and everything's wrong. That doesn't help change things. The reality is that I'm trying to move towards the idea where people accept the fact that they're beautiful as is. It's not just beauty isn't just a physical entity, and this is the problem that, you know, we've been socialized to believe that beauty is attractiveness, and attractiveness is not the same thing as beauty. You know, anybody can actually be attractive. So there's various technologies you can purchase, clothes you can wear, makeup you can put on to make yourself attractive. It does not make you beautiful. And you know, if we watch the films and the cartoons and the adverts, that message is somehow lost. And so that scene, like I said, is really just trying to encourage like men and women to understand that they're both victims to this doctrine. So 9 years have passed since I made that film, and there's more acceptance towards the diversity of African people and, you know, how beauty can express itself in various different ways, not just in in hair. Hair is often the symbol of beauty. Clearly, even that is misogynistic, that whole idea that a woman's beauty is in her hair. Again, that's another story for another day. But even though we have more representation, the underlying values are still there. So children can go to school with an afro hair and be turned away or excluded because the school doesn't accept it as their natural state and wants them to conform. A colleague at work or a student doing their viva or dissertation or something when they've got to be examined can actually be turned away or seen as less professional or less qualified because they've actually decided to rock up just how they feel comfortable. Even myself wearing a traditional African top and not wearing a suit and tie, people will assume that I'm not professional. There's all kinds of different values, and these things are still with us to this very day. The problem with this is that this is not just an issue of ethnicity and racism. This is also an issue of sexism and misogyny. And so these beauty standards, being explicitly tied to the female form and female ideas of beauty, have been and continue to be a very powerful tool to keep women in their place. If you can convince women that they're not beautiful. So, when someone wakes up, if that person's a lovely person, they're beautiful. It doesn't matter whether they've brushed their teeth, their breath might stink, but they're still beautiful, right? But if you can convince a woman that, hey, I've woken up, I've had a really lovely morning, I'm really chilled and relaxed, I just want to run to the shop to get myself something. Oh, I can't leave my front room without having done my makeup, without having done my hair, then actually you're succeeded in actually undermining the confidence of an independent woman. And that has implications, not just if she has children or how she interacts with her nieces and how she interacts with her friends, but also just going further in the workplace, how she interacts with her colleagues, what she will accept, what choice of partner she chooses. If a woman can only attract a partner who likes her only if she's wearing loads of makeup, then there's something wrong. Because that's a suggestion that, hold on, those men who only chose her because she's wearing, technology that makes her attractive, don't actually like her physicality as it is. So all these things, like I said, things have changed and have improved. The issue of representation has changed because the issue of sexuality and gender is changing. But the underlying misogynist idea of beauty being linked to femininity and to womanhood, and men just being rugged as we are, unfortunately, we're still with that. I say, how do I keep my cultural heritage alive? I think there's a really good African saying. I'm not an African because I'm born in Africa, but I'm an African because Africa is born in me. So I'm a member of the diaspora. I was born in the UK. My Yoruba is pretty poor when I speak it. People will laugh at me back at home. But I still practice it. And I think one of the things that we sometimes forget is that we become, I don't want to say, it sounds cliche, but like ambassadors for our communities when we're in the diaspora. So it's not about trying to replicate Nigeria in the UK. It's about recognizing that there's development of our communities wherever we are, and how do we stay true to that. So for me, I do simple things, like I prefer wearing traditional tops. I never hide away from the fact that I'm not Ogun spirit, that I'm a Yoruba man. My children will have Yoruba names. We carry these traditions on. I pour libation when it's required. So there's certain rites and practices that I do in my private space. But I don't succumb to this idea that I must act in a certain way, because I'm not the same as if I was born back in Ijebu-Ode, the village or the town where my parents come from. I'd be a different Toyin than the Toyin that was born here. And so there is a synthesis of the Britishness that is part of me. And I might not have pride in British history, because I don't, obviously, for enslavement and colonialism. But I have to acknowledge my nationality is British, and I'm speaking English. But I'm also Yoruba, and I have far more pride in that. So as a Pan-Africanist, I'm often reminding people to be proud of who they are. So like if if you're Ghanaian, if you're Jamaican, if you're Trinidadian, if you're Senegalese, don't be ashamed of those things, because colonialism has a really toxic legacy. Even people in Cymru, I say Cymru, it's really funny because people use the word Wales, not realising that the word Wales translates into foreigner. And so colonialism is quite pernicious, that it can actually name the land where people come through, foreigner. And so they have to have their own language to articulate who they are. It's the same thing like colonialism in Northern Ireland. So for me, it's about recognising that we're always growing, always changing, always developing. So, for someone who's in diaspora, You know, I take pride that I'm 1 foot in and 1 foot in the future. I don't think anything's wrong with that.